Baby Driver opening sequence.
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go. So let's watch this 6-minute opening clip.
Muted. Muted.
Should be playing. Oh, is it not? Huh. Can't even do it. Anyway, I guess you guys get the point, but film sucks without sound. That's basically the point I'm trying to make here. Film is a visual medium, but it's also an auditory medium that is like the hybrid of both. We tend to forget audio because you can't see it, and film is a primarily visual medium. But even in the original silent film era, there was still music, there was still the sounds of the projector running, there was always audio involved, because you can't really stop hearing unless you're deaf. So it's always part of a film experience. And so I'm going to, I guess, introduce the idea of what goes into a sound design, the most fundamental parts of a sound design in modern motion picture making. I guess to start off, I'll just try to give a rough overview of what sound is. Sound is basically just vibrations of air molecules traveling through the air, and it reaches your ear, and your brain processes the information, and you perceive a sound. And it works in a lot in the same way, at least in the digital age now. Sound recording technology is basically just mechanical ears that listen to things, and they sample them in ones and zeros and recreate that on speakers to create more sound, the sound that you just heard, that the microphone just heard. It works in exactly the same way as like visual, video. It's basically videos are composed of like pixels, like a screen, like it has different resolutions. So you have a lot of information if it's like a 4K video. There's not as much information if it's like just standard definition, because it's just less pixels, which constitute a unit of information, which builds a picture. And just like how you can overexpose a picture when you're recording a video, you can also overexpose audio, and that's called peaking. And that's when you have sound levels set your gain level, which is the amount of electricity basically going through the device to produce the sound and record the sound. If that's too high and the sound is too loud, it's going to max out the device, and you're going to lose information because it just can't go that high, basically. And it's just something to be aware of when you're recording audio, or when you're listening to audio, trying to make sure that it's okay. Just that. Very basic stuff, but you tend to forget about it. You got to train your ear for it, basically. What is a sound design? Basically, a sound can be broken for a film, for any film really, can be broken up into these main parts. That would be, this is a horrible marker. My God. Anyway, whatever, I don't have to do. Dialogue, Foley, backgrounds, effects, and music. These are the general categories of sound design. Each one of these will be covered in maybe broken up into even smaller parts, like Foley. Technically, footsteps are technically part of Foley because it's something an actor does. Backgrounds are the room tone, the space that they're in. That's the sound of that. And effects are anything else that doesn't immediately come from a character on screen, like touching anything. I guess I'll define Foley. Does anyone know what Foley is, by any chance? How much of an idea does anyone have about Foley? Is it like zero, or like you've heard of the thing, but you're like, I don't know what that is, something to do with sound?
Certain noises that go on in the scene that, like, I guess, I don't know, they have something, they usually have things to do, like, what's going on. So it's not like, it's hard to explain. Like, I know what it is, but it's hard for me to explain. So it's not like the audio, it's like the different, it's like the other things that go on. It's not the people speaking.
You're on the right track. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, how I've heard Foley defined is any sound that a character physically makes. So, and that's the difference, because when I was learning this, like I still have a hard time like in editing. Oh, is this a Foley or is this a sound effect? It just comes with working with the territory, but learning the difference. But basically, the definition of Foley that I like to use is just any sound that the character physically makes, and effects are everything else. Anything else that are not like backgrounds or dialogue. Foley might also reach out into like minor like coughs and like sounds that aren't like actually like words, but that's very specific to whatever project you're working on. So yeah, these are all the elements that go into making a sound design. Dialogue is the top of the list here. You can think of this as well, you could replace background effects. I mean, everyone has their different hierarchy, but as far as the most important element of the sound design, I would say that the dialogue is the most important, because you could hear whatever they're doing, but a lot of the times, most modern storytelling that's not too avant-garde or anything is usually told visually and through the dialogue. And if you can't hear the dialogue, you can't understand what they're saying, you're not going to get the story, and the film's going to be not effective because it can't communicate that story to the audience. So basically, that's the fundamentals of what goes into making up a sound design. I like to think of dialogue as like the spine of the film. It'll just fall flat if it's not there, basically. Have you guys heard of the term sound editing, of course, and also sound mixing? Does anyone have any idea what the difference is between the two? Any guesses?
Mixing more like levels of stuff, and then editing is more like, I don't know, that's all I got.
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah, basically sound editing is the placement of audio clips or into like the places they are in the timeline with respect to the film. And mixing is you get that work someone has already done and you apply EQs to it, apply reverb, effects, or anything else, and you blend it and mix it, of course. And just basically the job of the mixer is to make sure everything is in its right place on levels, everything is in its right. It sounds well, sounds good as far as like frequencies. Like if someone's voice has like too much of it was recorded with a mic that has a lot of high end, but the voice needs to be bassy, they can drop the high end a little bit and bring out the low end to make that voice sound big and booming. Special effects are usually done in mixing. Those are the two like primary positions, I guess, of sound editing. There's in the real world, there's obviously many different positions. The sound team is usually composed up of 10 or 12 people, depending on the scale of the project and the complexity of it. But there's a lot of different steps that go into making it that are just not part of the whole allure of filmmaking, which is kind of gets lost, but it's still interesting, I think, and a very important part of making any good film. Okay. Did you get it?
I have it section on there. That's what I was looking for. Should we stand up and do this? How do I find the?
Have either of you taken a class that you need to do any sound editing yet?
Oh yeah, I guess I should ask that. What are you guys' experience with sound or audio editing at all?
I haven't taken a sound editing or audio course yet because it's the first semester. I'm a freshman, so it's our first semester. But we've had
You're an intro field.
yes. So we've done like audio production, but we haven't done like audio editing yet. And like we just recently learned how to use the Tascam. But I have like a little bit of experience from high school, but nothing major.
So this is
That's the same thing I have when I see.
this is music behind it. Does it matter when?
Oh my God!
There's YouTube. It doesn't need to dial or anything.
We're gonna find
Alright,
it
that's
right
fine.
now, and I just like.
I'm just using it as an
I
example.
watched the
Fine.
video, and I
You can
realized
just-
the importance,
just don't
so
say it.
now it's like, it's something that I'm working on actually right now.
Okay, so you're looking to do more with audio, cool, that's helpful to know.
All right, so this is just an example of like a project done in Premiere that actually.
Hey, look,
There I am.
Right.
It's we didn't see you too. Okay, that was cool. So this is just a rough example of like as a picture editor, what you'd be putting together. Very simplified, of course, but you know, for student projects, we usually don't have Hollywood budgets, so it's not like getting it that complex that fast. But anyway, so this is just a short video that was made in CP2, and as you can see, we only have one audio track because we only used one mic, and there's no. It was only for each scene was only mic with one mic for all the characters, and it was a short scene, so you're only gonna have so much to work with here. But if this were a larger project that had more characters and more audio files, it would have more tracks. But Premiere is primarily a video editing software. You can edit audio and you can put it together as rough in Adobe, but it's only going to get you so far as making sure it sounds good and as far as what you want to do to the sound to create anything special beyond just like dialogue and like backgrounds. If you want to do anything more than that, which I would hope, if you want to do something more than that, spice up the film, make it look good, sound good. What you want to do is you want to bring it into Pro Tools. Pro Tools is the industry standard as far as sound editing and sound mixing. It is pretty much the only program used or like 99% of the time, that's the program you're going to be using if you edit film, edit audio for film, TV, or audio related. Now, as you can see, this is the film. I've just finished it, but I need to get it sound edited and sound mixed. But it's a Premiere file. I can't import Premiere files into Pro Tools. That's just not a thing that you can do. Except you can. It's different. But you can. So basically the secret of this is to take the Premiere file, turn it into a universal media file, and have the Pro Tools eat it up. Spit it back out, just like this, in Pro Tools. So I'm going to take you through how to do that. This is a very important thing. Even if you guys don't end up going into audio or anything like that, if you have any interest in editing, picture editing, this is a very important thing to know because this is what you're going to be doing at the end of every picture lock that you do, sending it to an audio person. So yeah, it's pretty important. Very simple process, but nonetheless, very important. So what you want to do here in the editing window, you want to make sure you have the timeline selected. You want to go up to File, you want to go to Export, and normally when you want to export something from Premiere, you'd go to Media, but because we want to convert the whole session itself into a readable file for Pro Tools, we want to go down here to either OMF or AAF. These two formats are the two universal media formats. OMF stands for Open Media Format, and AAF stands for Avid Something Format. It's like, I can't remember what the thing is, but they're the same thing, but they have a few major differences. OMF was the original type of file that was used, and until recently, Avid developed AAF, which is a more modern, a more efficient way to do it because it allows you. I'm getting ahead of myself. OMF, what that does is basically. You can export a one file, the OMF file, and you can have all the audio like clips in that one file. So you only have to give that one file to your sound editor, and it's a very easy workflow. But OMF only limits its capacity to actually hold audio in the file itself to 2 gigabytes. So if you have a project that's like any like 10 minutes in length and you have a lot of audio already in your Premiere session, just placed for your sound editor, it's not going to let you export the OMF and have it contain that. It's just going to be basically it's going to be a file that points to other files but doesn't actually contain the files. So what you're going to have to do is export another folder with all the files, and that's very easy. It's very easy to use that workflow and have things get lost in the process and like trying to match clips up. I don't recommend it. So what you want to use is AAF, and the beauty of AAF is that it eliminates all those problems by allowing you to have no limit on the amount of like data that you can go inside the AAF file itself, and it'll hold everything you want. You can just give them that one file, and there you go. You do want to give them like a copy of all the audio files and all that just to be safe, but I mean you don't need to with this workflow. So this is the AAF export settings menu, drop-down menu. There's going to be two boxes here available for you. The one on top here that's separate from the rest of them is a mixed down video. Basically what that'll do is that along with exporting the whole session and all the information as an AAF, it'll also export a rendered version of the video itself. So you have one video clip and also export that with the audio that's already in the clip. So it'll basically make a movie in the same step as you're exporting the AAF. So I always like to click that. I don't actually use the audio track that I get from this when I input it into Pro Tools. I usually just mute it because it's only used for a guide track and it's just not necessary. But I like to have it nonetheless. And then in this menu it says breakdown to mono. Basically what that'll do is you can see actually here that this one audio track that we have here has two distinct channels. It's coming through. It's got a waveform on the top, waveform on the bottom. The waveform on the top is actually going through the left channel. The waveform on the bottom is actually going to go through the right channel. So those are two different streams of data being sent out to your speakers, and it's being produced in two different speakers and allows you to stereo pan and get some dynamic range, pan. And so you can actually have sounds move from left to right, and it's kind of cool. But what AAF makes you do is break it to mono, so it's not going to export a stereo track. It's going to export two mono tracks. One is the left, and one is the right. You have to manually pan them. That's just what you have to do. It's kind of annoying, but Pro Tools allows you to merge them back into one stereo track very easily. It's just a thing that they make you do. I guarantee that there's a workflow reason for that, but I haven't found any advantage to that other than just more work for me. But oh well. Render audio clip effects. If you have any audio effects in Premiere, click that, and I guess why not? Actually, you don't want to do that. It depends. It depends if you've done anything radical or not. I wouldn't click that.
If you click it, will it be baked in and you can
Yeah.
adjust it?
It'll be baked into your audio file. So if you EQ'd something, you forgot you EQ'd it, but it actually sounds like shit, and you just exported it, you won't be able to get rid of it. Really.
If you don't click it, will the effect be changeable?
Yes.
Or
The
will
effect
it
just
not
won't be
exist?
there. The effect just will not be there. Recommend not using it. But I mean, if they're fades, that's a different thing. If they're fades, actually no, it's not. Don't do it.
So it's more permanent if you do.
Yeah, it
Like baking in the lot.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
it's
so
like
bake
it locks
it.
it in there.
Right.
So don't do it. I
If
guess.
you do select that box, then you also have the option to select it without effects, so that the audio person could put it in without the effects.
Yeah.
But
It's
will
just
the
a
mixed
file.
down video have all the effects that you did do, so your audio person can hear?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't been able to. I mean, I honestly, it wouldn't matter unless you did something super radical, because the mixed down video audio that you get, you're just going to be using as a guide track to just make sure that to guide your editing and find effects that aren't there at all. But it's not going to be included in the final mix anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. Again, unless there's some radical changes that you guys did. Then these two options are very important. Sample rate basically is like the pixel resolution for audio files for like the pixel resolution of a video file is the same thing as sample rate for like audio. It's the amount of times it samples the audio waveform and has a more accurate representation of what it actually is. It's just a higher fidelity.
That's 48,000 like
Like,
beats
yeah.
per what?
Beats per second.
Per second. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, so whenever a microphone is like recording audio or listening or being used, basically what it's doing is that the circuitry inside is beeping and taking a measure of the
For the amount of power on the
Basically,
diaphragm
yeah.
or something, right?
the voltage in the microphone gets modulated by the sound that it receives, and that it records the modulation of the voltage within the microphone, and that's how it does that 48,000 times per second if you set it to that, if you record that way, which is what you want because you want more, but it'll do that and record it, and that's how it is able to recreate the sound. Basically, you're going to have two options here. You're going to have 48,000 and 96,000. Unnecessary to export 96,000 unless somehow it was already recorded in there. You just want to stick with 48,000. That's going to be very enough. It's good. The other thing though, I don't know why this is default like this, but the bits per sample is set to 16. You want to set that to 24. Basically, how basically what bits per sample, that's basically saying your bit depth. There are many things that comes along that go into like an audio file. It's the sample rate, primarily the amplitude, which is the volume you recorded at, of course, and then there's the bit depth. The bit depth basically is how much information, like specifically volume information, is stored with every sample. So every single one of these 48,000 samples of the waveform has a level, has like another designation of how loud that sample was on a scale of 1 to 16. If it's 16 bits of depth, or if it's 24 bits of depth, it'll have 24 possible ranges or like levels of volume that the sample could be set at, and that the more bit depth you have, the higher fidelity the sound, and the more accurate it is to how it sounds in nature rather than how it sounds in just like recreated digitally. So it's always good to do 24. Now this is where we get into the nitty-gritty of this menu. Basically, what you can choose to do with your audio files is to embed the audio into the AAF itself, or separate the audio into a separate audio folder that contains all the files, and have the AAF be much smaller and basically just point to all of that. In my experience, I really dislike using separate audio. It's very, I have linking issues with the file when I try to import it into Pro Tools every single time when I do this, and sometimes Pro Tools just won't like match up the audio files even though they're named the same thing that it's looking for. It's kind of ridiculous. So avoid that altogether by choosing AAF and then clicking embedded audio, and that'll put all the audio files actually inside the AAF, so it's not just pointing, it's actually inside it, and you can just import that into Pro Tools and you'll be smooth sailing. Format. This is going to ask for the format. It's the format of the audio files themselves. You want broadcast wave, which is a wave file, which is high fidelity and works with
Lossless.
It's lossless, so it doesn't actually compress any audio files. What you see or what you hear is what you're getting. You're getting everything. It's not going to compress it in any way and put it in a different codec. Broadcast wave is always the way to go. It's never going to be rejected by any employer or any like machine or any program really. AIFF, it doesn't work with everything. It works with most things, like 98% of the time. But it's an Apple like audio format,
Codec,
so don't bother with it. Yeah. So use wave and render copy complete audio files. This is also very important. You want to make sure that this is probably the most important thing on here. You want to make sure that you copy the complete audio files, because otherwise if you trim audio files, it'll give the option to have handle frames. And basically what handle frames are the ends and the beginnings of your clips and how much data is beyond where the handle is set on the region. So this clip right here, might be longer than this, but if I set to trim audio files and give it 0 handles, when I open it into Pro Tools, I'm gonna get this file. Even though there's more here, it's not gonna give me that. It's gonna cut the clip, the audio, right there. You don't want that, especially if you're editing audio and you need to find a different take within another take to match up dialogue or anything. And so what you want to set it to copy complete audio files. Yes.
So you would use Pro Tools to line up dialogue as well?
No, generally the picture editor does that, and then the sound editor edits it further. But normally, sound editors or dialogue editors do not sync audio.
Okay, so then if you did the render separate clips, would that then say it was one long clip of different takes, wouldn't it then make the full clip and it wouldn't just be the clip you're trying to do sound for?
Wait, what do you mean?
So then when you say you did the separate ones, and
Yeah.
you had this one is just one big long music thing, but say there's a bunch of different audio
Yeah.
for dialogue and everything. Do you just mean
It's not going to change anything
it
on the
doesn't change
timeline.
the composition.
Yeah.
You just mean you could extend it past.
You
what
can
it is.
extend it,
Okay.
exactly. And that's what, that's an important part of editing. Sometimes you need to make adjustments.
I got you.
All right, cool. So that's that. Complete audio files, broadcast wave, embedded audio, 24, 48, enable, breakout to mono, or else it won't be able to do any of this. And you just gotta hit OK. Let's do, what is this? CP2 in class, shoot. AAF, I'm gonna export this to, I'll just do it to the desktop real quick. Export it there. It's gonna export the video like audio work is there a free trial for Pro Tools? There's Pro Tools first. I believe that one of the main differences is it only gives you like 32 tracks available at a time, which I think is pretty much more than
most little projects.
for little projects. If you do any like a thesis size, like a 15-minute project, you might run into limits, but there's a limited version available. All right, so let me just quickly export this. Are we good? Are we golden for the screen recording?
It is screen recording.
All right, excellent. We'll try to not break this again.
Make sure you put it on Nico's.
Yes, I will do that. Add audio, podcast wave, complete. Hey, Nico. This mouse sucks. Actually, no,
Keyboard shortcut for Android.
Command Control N.
Pork. Oh god.
Control everyone.
Command. Yeah.
All right, we're almost there.
Almost there. Let me get to the fun part. Then I can show you a project that I worked on last semester for Marlena's sound editing class, and you can see just how complex.
Explain what you.
Was it? Wait. Marlena, actually, she's Polish, and it's a very long, very beautiful last name. But I can't. Anyway, she's a professional dialogue editor. She's been editing dialogue for like major motion pictures, I think, for like 40 years. She's like well known. She works. She worked on Ken Burns. Works on all of Ken Burns' projects, like the Vietnam War. The other documentary did before that. I can't remember which one it was. But she also works with the other political documentary guy. Do you remember that? The other Ken Burns.
Pretend murder documentary.
The guy with the big hat and like he led the march.
Yeah.
What's his
I
name?
know exactly who you're talking
You know what I'm talking about?
Don't
You
know
never
the
remember his
guy.
name. Anyway, she's worked with big names and she's got pull, and she knows her stuff very well. And in her class, we basically the final project is to work on a thesis and sound edit a thesis, and I can show you what my group did. All right, so that exported somewhere here. Somewhere. So you get these 3 files. I've never actually gotten these 2 before. Oh, these must be the. No? Interesting. This is interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, you get the video on the top, that's the first one.
Oh, that okay. There we go. All right.
And then the XMP is the data about the video, I think it's metadata.
Okay. So this is all you're gonna get. This is the AAF file itself. Let's see. Now we go to. Let's quit Premiere.
Bye, Premiere.
Goodbye. Let's go to Pro Tools. This icon down here.
Did we explain why we're in this room? We're in this room because 168 doesn't have Pro Tools, so this room does.
Sure. That's why.
The editing suites, like downstairs, they have Pro Tools.
There are specific like Pro
Yeah.
Tools suites.
Right.
I don't know about
Yeah, I don't
the
think-
editing suites have Pro Tools. I think there's picture
Got it.
editing and then there's audio editing suites.
So this is the when you open Pro Tools, which if you take an intro to audio class, you'll be working with Pro Tools. So this is going to be old. Well, it's probably old information for those who are in intro to audio. But
You might
Basic-
want me to do intro audio next semester?
I'm taking it eventually. It's either next semester or fall next year.
Some point. Okay. Yeah, I know registration's coming up, so.
yeah. So this is the dashboard. This is what you're going to get when you open your thing. You'll notice similar terms that I just explained earlier: bit depth, file type, sample rate, and I/O settings. That's a good one. Basically, I/O settings are your in and out settings. It's one of the most fundamental things about like audio production as far as things go, because you have to have a signal, which is the audio, and it has to go into something. Then it has to come back out because it's got to be heard by somebody. Basically, what Pro Tools allows you to do here is there's a bunch of different fancy mixes or setups that you can use, but the one you want to use is stereo mix because that'll send out 2 channels for 2 speakers, which is the basic audio setup for most things nowadays. So just make sure it's on stereo mix and not last use because that's always a gamble.
Never know.
You never know. Also, you can check interleaved if you'd like. I prefer to check it. Basically, what that means is when you're done in Pro Tools and you bounce it, which is the audio production version of exporting, it'll give you one file that has multiple channels instead of one file for each channel. So it'll give you one giant clip instead of 2 clips that are one for the left channel and one for the right. I like interleaved. 24-bit wave. Cool. Let's go to this thing.
Thank you.
There we go.
Yes.